Okay. Justine, what a pleasure to have met you a couple of months back. And just some background on Justine. She's a leadership coach and a learning experience designer. Comes from the US, and so she's on the what? It's very cold there. That's all I know. She has a master's in leadership and organizational development, and she's the creator of Human Mindset, which is a practical, what is the future of work philosophy. And she fully gets it that AI adoption isn't about replacing people with technology, but empowering people to upgrade how they think, how they learn, and adapt in an environment, in a world that is really being accelerated by AI, and AI is accelerating. You will notice that today's program is not a webinar. It's not a lecture. It's a live, let's try, let's have a go, let's make mistakes, let's have a laugh. So it's applied. It's not us sitting here lecturing you. It's applied, meaning you're going to try one or two things and you're going to do really great at some, and then some might frustrate you, and that's all cool. That's part of the learning process. He's a circus artist. I never knew that. I love it. I love it. Avid snowboarder and adventure traveler. She's super competitive, and she's deeply team oriented. She trains leaders the way great coaches train players. So the link between sports and business are quite close, and she believes in everyone's potential. That's a little bit about Justine. I'm super, super stoked to be able to introduce you. Just quickly about myself, I spent about 35 years in corporate. I worked for the Rembrandt Group, and then I worked also for the Procter & Gamble Group. I was primarily in sales and marketing. I had an international job, so I lived in the UK, and I had to live in the UK for 2 weeks, and then I'd be traveling for 2 weeks to various markets around the world. So I got the opportunity to work across cultures, which was awesome. And now I coach and people online in business, and I work across quite a few different time zones. I work with Mexico, Taiwan, China, and Turkey primarily. And I'm really excited to be working with Justine on applied AI. It's an area that is going to be developing quite quickly over the next few years. And that's a little bit about me.
Right. So there are essentially 4 kinds of users. What we have determined, there are what we're calling looker-uppers, and this is the majority of AI users right now, Gen AI users. Around 60% of AI users use their AI tool like a glorified search engine. So they're basically using it like Google, that they can chat with a little bit more. And so they're asking it to look things up, and they're getting responses from it. And this is fine. We will talk a little bit about hallucinations further in the course and why this may not be the best use case for AI. But for now, that is, if you're doing it that way, that is the majority of people as well. There are also folks who are using AI as an email architect. So they're using AI to compose their emails or draft responses. So some people are using it as a looker-upper and also as an email architect. And I think it's good for society that we're taking a pause to actually think about what we're writing and before sending something back, especially if it's emotionally charged and things like that. It's a pretty useful tool for that. Surprisingly, the folks that are using it as a chat friend or a companion or makeshift therapist is actually a pretty low number comparative to what we're hearing in the media. It sounds like it's everybody and people are falling in love with AI and getting married to AI and all this crazy stuff. That's actually not common. So people that are using it as a chat friend is only about 20% of users. And then finally, we have a category that we're developing ourselves called cyborgs. This is people who are using AI as an extension of self, incorporating it into all their personal and professional workflows where appropriate. And that's what we're focused on here today. And obviously, we don't have any statistics yet, but hopefully at least 100% of you will be cyborgs by the end of this course. Getting into some more use cases, I'm going to talk a little bit about how Robert and I use it. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Robert now to share how he personally uses AI.
So the first thing I put there is I have loads of fun. It's so cool. I use it for all kinds of things. And I think, like, I took a photograph of my mom's fridge and then said to AI, please suggest 3 meals and also give me the recipe. And lo and behold, there it goes, gives it to me. Even picked up that there was papers in the fridge. So I have a lot of fun with it. Social media marketing, it's something that I use it for all the time. So I will give it a prompt and I'll say, you would have seen today, a lot of you, something went out an hour before, something went out 15 minutes before, and that's all done by AI. Cut and paste or send it or remind me that I need to send it. I use it, excuse me, a lot for software, educating me on different forms of software. So let me give you maybe like a really silly example. Oh, I don't know how to, something's wrong with my LinkedIn. I take photographs of LinkedIn and it says, yep, you need to do this and this. I'm just giving you a stupid example, LinkedIn, but I use it for a lot of software. If there's new software that I'm learning to educate and teach me. I use AI a lot so I have a lot of students and I need to standardize the scoring of those students. So what I do is I have a blank template. I record the classroom with them. I put it into AI and it populates the templates for me. And so instead of taking 2, 3, 4 hours to write reports, it does it for me in 5 minutes. I use it as a thinking partner a lot. So to challenge my thoughts, to challenge my views. I use it to develop content for loads of things. Complex information, I use certain AI tools for very complex information. A friend of mine recently got divorced, and there's another example, and she had this document that no one understood because it was all in legal speak. And we gave it to AI and said, speak to me as if I'm a 16-year-old kid and make 10 bullet points to summarize. Bang, done. So yeah, and I think the key for me is I'm curious. So I really want to keep learning, and I think that's a key skill for people that want to get better at AI. Become curious, and that's just a quick summary of what I use AI for. Thanks, Justine.
So I'm going to just share a little bit about how I use it, which is different than how Robert uses it, and that's how it should be. This is not something where there's just a handbook on how you use AI. There is just a set of tools, and then you personalize it for yourself. So for me, I mainly use it for planning and organizing ideas. And because I'm a coach and I'm working with my own ChatGPT, I call him Turing, he picks up on how I think and becomes a thinking partner, like Robert was saying. And then not only does it help with planning, but he provides action items and suggestions in my own voice because it's a mirror in that way. So I find a lot of people talk about ChatGPT and other AI tools being very validating. Mine's very direct, like tells me what to do, which is interesting. So it really does learn from you, which I think is quite interesting. I use it for research and learning support as well. So if I want to learn a new software tool or just any sort of topic, I tend to use AI as a learning assistant. Rather than looking up a whole text of instructions, I might ask it to give me those instructions step by step so that I can consume it better. So like how Robert was describing, you can ask it to explain it to you like you're younger. You can also ask it to explain it to you in steps rather than that wall of text, which can be a little overwhelming at times. I definitely use it for generating content, lots of images, captions for social media, communications, emails, workshop materials. It's obviously not going to just spit out something fully completed. And I'm never going to take something and just take it as is, as the prompt that pops out. But for me, it's just a way to get the ball rolling and get some text or some images going. And then I can always iterate from there. Okay, so for me, I also use it for intellectual cohesion and brand alignment. That way, if I ever come out with something new, a new product, a new idea, whatever, I run it through sort of simulation style, my ChatGPT. And so when it does understand you a little bit more cohesively, it can provide better suggestions and advice when it comes to that sort of And then finally, I have a couple digital clones. These are custom GPTs that I use for client-facing experiences. I've had a lot of fun building those. So that's how I use it. So our learning objectives that we have set out here today are to find out what AI is actually good at right now. It's evolving. We'll get good at other things, but right now we do want to differentiate between what it's good at and what it's not good at, and when we need to step in as humans. So we also want to know how to learn to ask AI better questions and get better answers. So we'll have some conversation on prompting. And then we'll discuss selecting the right tool or tools for the situation. So depending on what we're trying to do, we may want to use a different AI tool because they're not identical. And finally, we will build an AI action plan so that you can get started right away. So we'll do a quick takeaway at the end. I actually just want to talk about some quick definitions because there's a lot of terms that are being thrown around right now that are often conflated. And I just want to let you know like what's different and what we're focusing on here today. So you've heard Gen AI, generative AI. So that is the one that came from predictive text and now has become these large language models, such as ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, Gemini. You've heard all these names. And this is AI that generates content for you. So based on a prompt, it will generate text, code, images, ideas, but you have to input it. So it's not going to just do it on its own. It will do that if in response to you asking it a question or telling it what you want. That's generative AI. So it's creating something. Then we have agentic AI. You've probably heard of agents, and agents are different than generative AI. So they can sometimes generate things, but they are a little bit more autonomous. So they can decide what to do and take action across tools to achieve a goal. So you're setting some parameters for the agent, and then it's going off and making decisions on its own based on those parameters. So for example, I might ask, I would like to make a reservation for an Italian restaurant on Saturday evening for 2 people in South Philadelphia. Those are my parameters, but there's a lot of options there. So what the agent would do would go out and search for that reservation using OpenTable or Resi, or even calling the restaurant somehow. Sometimes they've done some interesting things, and then they book it for you. And so what I would receive would be an email notification and a calendar invite telling me where my reservation is. So I'm abdicating a little bit of the decision making over to the agent. So that is the difference. It's not generating content for me, but it might, as part of its process, generate content, but its ultimate goal is to take action. That's what an agent does. And then finally, you've probably heard the word automation a lot in the same breath as AI, but they're not the same. So automation has been around forever. And this is just a predefined workflow that executes tasks automatically based on rules or triggers. And so AI might be included, or it might be an agent is a type of an automation, but it could be completely non-AI. So just so you know, those are entirely separate things, and we will talk about them at some point, but here in this particular workshop, we are going to focus on Gen AI. So when we talk about Gen AI, we really want to know, what can it do? What can it do? So this is our reality check. So let's start with what it's good at. So it's really good at turning incomplete ideas into structured outlines. What do I mean by that? What does that mean in practice? It means you can actually just talk to the bot and just throw out your stream of consciousness ideas of, I would like to write a book about blah, 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 and then just give it your thoughts, give it your ideas. You can say it all out of order. You can say it just completely tangentially. And ultimately, what it'll spit back for you is going to be a structured outline, and it will organize your thoughts for you. So it's very good at that. If you are somebody that is more of a unstructured thinker or likes to just talk, you can do this in the car. You can turn some of the AI tools into voice mode, and you can just be just thinking out loud, and then it'll just spit back something very organized for you. And you could even ask it to turn it into an action item or a plan. So what it's also really good at, which we're aware of, is that it's drafting and iterating quickly. So that's writing a lot of text and then rewriting it really fast based on whatever engineering prompt that we provide. If we say, okay, I didn't like that first draft, can you please rewrite it as if it was written in a song by David Bowie? You can have it do that, and it will just rewrite it immediately. So it's really good at that. And that is, again, because it began as predictive text. So that's what it is doing. It does not know everything. What it is doing is predicting the next word based on the most likely response that a human would make. And it's using statistical analysis based on everything that's out there on the internet right now to base that prediction off of. So these predictive texts aren't necessarily the truth. It's just what a human might write, is most likely to write. So let's keep that in mind when we talk about what it's not good at. But next, as far as good at things, analyzing information from long text and images. This is what I really love it for. If I have something extremely long and boring and I don't feel like reading it, all that fine print, could be like a long legal document, could be an NDA, could be terms and conditions. I can just copy and paste that, put that into AI and say, please summarize this into one paragraph and tell me what I need to know. So it's really helpful for saving time in that sense. A lot of reading, it can analyze it very quickly and pull out what information you need to take action on. It can do the same thing with images. So like Robert was saying when he was asking AI to help it with LinkedIn, you can take a screenshot of something and send it to your AI bot and ask information about it, and it can analyze it based on the information that it sees. So it does see, this is computer vision. It's really good at providing options and different perspectives. This is where we've been using the term thinking partner. This is what I'm talking about here. So instead of just assuming I'm a genius and I know everything, I can say, here's my thought. What are some alternatives? Or I would like to think of 10 options for whatever. So it's a lot of brainstorming that I'm really outsourcing, but I ultimately am making the decision on what I will do with that information. But instead of sitting there racking my brain for hours thinking of something, it can really get the ball rolling and come up with some alternatives, as well as if I wanted to say something like, how might Robert think about this email, or how might a CEO interpret this email, or something like that. You can put it through a theoretical simulation like that, and it can look through that lens and give you a response that's pretty good. And that's another way that you can use it, just as a thinking partner, as a way to be able to analyze your own thoughts before taking action. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what it's not so good at. So this is also, let's keep in mind right now, it is constantly evolving. It is getting better at things every day. So whatever I'm saying right now is true right now, but it may not be true 6 months from now. So just keep that in mind. So what it's not great at is intuiting real world context. And what I mean is if you don't give it the why, as to like why you're asking it a question, or what you're trying to achieve, or who's involved and what are the complex social dynamics, it's not going to know. And it's not going to assume either. So it'll give you something very straightforward that, so especially if you're asking questions as it relates to social issues or dynamics, make sure you're being very clear on all of those complex nuances, because it will assume it based on aggregate. And if your situation is not average, which a lot of situations aren't average, you probably don't want an average response. So that's something to keep in mind. Making ethical decisions and important judgment calls. So this is what everyone is really concerned about, is how AI is going to just start making decisions on its own. And when we talk about agents, we are abdicating some control over to the agent. We ultimately want to make sure that we're keeping hold of decisions that are ethical and really important as it relates to people and their jobs, being paid and things like that. Next, it's not great at producing perfect results on the first try. And the reason I mention this is there are users who come to AI a little bit hesitant, and then they'll try it for the first time. They'll enter in one prompt, it'll spit something weird out, and then they'll just never use it again because they think it's not good. So it's not great if you're just dabbling and expecting it to be perfect. It does require sometimes some zhuzhing, as I've said, or prompt engineering. And we'll talk a little bit about that. However, my caveat to that is it often does decline in quality if you keep zhuzhing and engineering. So the best strategy is to make sure that your first prompt is really clear and good, so that whatever it spits out first is pretty close to what you want. You want it 80% close. That way you can maybe edit it yourself or only provide a couple engineering suggestions, because the quality does decline over time if you just keep providing constraints on it. And you could think about that like a person too. If somebody is doing a sport, for example, and they're doing some movement and it's close but not great, and then you start making all these teeny tiny adjustments, they might start overthinking it, and they can forget the first instruction and they remember the second instruction, but they don't even hear the third instruction. So it can be overwhelming for the LLM as well. So it is more important to just be clear up front. We don't want it to replace human interaction. That's not to say if you do have a chat friend that you shouldn't have a chat friend. It's just we do think it is important to continue to have human relationships and to continue to collaborate. That is what will give us an edge in the future, is not trying to replicate what AI can do, but to remember what humans do that is different and that AI will never be able to do. There is value in human interaction. And finally, the most important thing is that it cannot guarantee accuracy or truth. And so, as I mentioned, it is predicting text. It is not pulling it from some like vast library of knowledge of truth. It's guessing what you want to hear. I'm just going to pause there for a second. So it's guessing what you want to hear. So that means it might create some sort of response that sounds really good and is exactly what you want to hear and looks really great on the slide. And maybe it even has data and statistics, but those all might be made. That is important. So you do want to make sure that you are checking your sources, you're clicking the links it's providing, making sure those links are active, making sure those links go to reputable sources and that they're relevant and recent. Otherwise, it is probably just going to say something that sounds amazing, but is not exactly true. Questions about this before we move forward? All right. Let's surge forth. We're going to talk a little bit about prompting here. If you ask it better questions, you'll get better answers. And that really helps to understand what comprises a good question and what is it looking for in order to be able to give you probably that 80% good response that we're looking for in that first response. So the first thing you want to think about are prompt standards. These are, if we're using our train analogy here, these are the basic rules that keep the train on the tracks so that it moves reliably forward. We just want to make sure that we have guardrails, that we know exactly where we're headed. That's what these standards are. So they work in concert with prompt engineering, but it's really the baseline is to make sure it meets the standards. So what are the standards? You want to have a goal. So be clear in your prompt what you're trying to get out of it. And that's important, especially if you are a stream of consciousness type person and you're just talking to the bot. But at the very least, make sure that you're saying at the end, I would like an email from this that is 2 paragraphs long. So make sure that you are very clear as to what you want it to build for you. What is your goal? What are you trying to achieve? Then it helps to include the why. That's that context that I was talking about. So why does this matter? Why does it matter to you? Why does it matter to the person who's going to receive it, who's going to be looking at it? Maybe if you are creating an ad, talk about who your target audience is and what what tends to be important to them and what you're hoping to get out of it. What is their call to action in whatever you're creating? So you're going to have different language based on what your goal is, and you want to make sure that language is geared towards the goal that you have and the context that you have. So that's the why. Then we have guardrails. Guardrails are what should be included in the generation and what should not be included in the generation. So that includes saying how long you want it to be, how many paragraphs. It also, if you have a certain voice that you want it to speak in, if you have a brand message that you want included or anything like that, but you also can say things that you don't want included. So I don't want emojis. I don't want M dashes. It does now respond to that. You can say all the things that you do want in the generation, what you don't want in it. So that's important too, so that you don't have to keep engineering over time. So every time you engineer it, it does change it a little. So if you were happy with it, you want to just tweak it a little. Finally, in what format? Do you want this in an email? Do you want this in a 2-page research abstract? Do you want this in a advertisement? Do you want this in a table? Do you want this in a form? Do you want this in a song? Think about what do you want the result to be. And these are the basic standards that all prompts should have. So no matter what you're saying, make sure that they include these 4 things. We will practice this, by the way. Okay. Cool. All right, moving forward. So the difference that I'm going to share here is prompt engineering is now like the practical action that you're taking to massage the prompts itself versus just the basic standard. Okay, so prompt engineering is designing instructions that tell the train where to go, how fast you want it to move, what it should do along the way. So it's a little bit more nuanced. And it starts with tool selection. So this is important to understand that all AI tools are not the same. There are multiple Gen AI tools out there on the market right now. Some of them are standalone resources. Some of them are built in to software like Canva or something like that. You might see the little like magic icon and you click the magic icon and it does things, or there's a little bot inside software that you already have that you can talk to. There's also enterprise tools such as Copilot and Gemini, which we will use here today, that are integrated into their whole suite of software. So there's pros and cons to each, and they also all have their own like personality and things that they're good at. So it's important to know that before you even ask the prompt, which tool is probably going to give me the best result. So that's part of prompt engineering. The second is abstract inquiry. So this is asking AI to write it in a certain voice or apply a particular perspective or frame it in a hypothetical, run a simulation, generate creative content. So all this is different. You're not looking something up on the internet. You are asking it to create something new and think about something in an entirely new way. That's abstract. Okay, so that's part of engineering as well. So you might want multiple lenses. You might want to look at it through multiple lenses or have a variety of options available to you. All that is prompt engineering. Then we have output improvements. So as I mentioned, the first output is usually the best, especially if your initial prompt is good and meets all the standards. However, it may not be perfect and you may want to zhuzh it. So reprompting to edit or improve the AI's output is part of prompt engineering. And it's also part of maintaining human oversight so that we're not just getting in the habit of asking a question, copying and pasting without even reading. We want to make sure that we are reading or taking a look at whatever it's providing and analyzing it and determining what's good about it, what's not good about it. And sometimes we want to do that edit ourselves. We'll copy and paste it into Google Docs, and it's a lot faster to do it that way. Or sometimes you need to have it regenerate the response. So that would be prompt engineering. So up here on the screen, we have 4 tools that we're going to be using here today. And I want you to get to know some of them and see what the differences are. I have some best 4 listed on the screen here. You can see what the personality differences are or the capability differences are, but it's really up to you as to which one works best with your workflows or how you communicate and generate content. So I'm not going to tell you one's better than the other. It really is completely situationally dependent. So what I'd like all of you to do right now is open up 4 tabs. And here are the URLs for each of these tools. And I want you to open one tool in each tab. So let's take 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes to do that. GPT is best for structured thinking and planning, summarization, drafting, iterating, custom GPTs. I like it, best because it knows me, because I use it as my personal workflow manager, but other people use other ones that know it better. So Claude is another one that's just an off-the-shelf tool, good for deep reading. You'll see it does have a very different personality. It forces prompt standards. It's good with long text analysis, document reasoning, information synthesis. I also have heard that they are not going to be using ads in the future, and I know some of the other tools might be using ads, so that's something to keep in mind. Copilot is Microsoft's AI tool. So it's integrated with Microsoft Suite. So a lot of organizations are using Copilot because they use Microsoft Office. And that means that the tool itself can connect to your email. It can connect to your Outlook calendar. It can connect to Word and PowerPoint and other things like that. So that's the benefit of Copilot. But you can also use it just as a regular thing. You don't have to have an enterprise tool to use Copilot. Same with Gemini. You can just use that as a regular user, but a lot of organizations are using it if their enterprise software is Google-based. So that's Gmail, Google Meet, Slides, Docs, things like that. All the same as Microsoft, but yeah, Google. Also, I have noticed Gemini is pretty good at graphic plus text generation. And the difference is like ChatGPT's images tend to be like really creative and pretty. Like Robert and I have our backgrounds that are ChatGPT. But if I wanted to have text on top of it, I would probably be better going to Gemini, because ChatGPT will sometimes give you like garbled text that just suggests text, but it's not always the right words. So yeah, little things you'll find out, little differences. So we're going to start with something easy. And the question is, plan a 5-day trip to Rome for under $3,000. So this might be different for all of you. That might be a family trip. It might be a couple trip. It might be a solo trip. You might have certain things you want to see. So make sure you're being very clear in your prompt. Provide it the standards. What is your goal? What is the why? What are the guardrails, and what format do you want? And as far as engineering goes, I suggest trying it in all the tools, see which one gives you the best result. But ultimately, over time, you'll start to learn which ones are better for this type of question and which ones are better for other types of questions. Take a couple minutes and plan a trip. All right, so let's move on to the next application activity. What I want you to do now, this is a little more personal, so you might have to provide more detail. I want you to outline a clear professional development plan for yourself that is in line with your long-term career goals and aspirations. So that means it needs to know your long-term career goals and aspirations before building it. So take a moment, use whichever or all tools, and let us know how it goes. All right, let's move forward. This is our last activity, and as I mentioned, ChatGPT may struggle with this one unless you use some clever footwork. I would like you to analyze your calendar and categorize how you spend your time. Then identify 3 ways to meaningfully adjust your schedule. This is something that would probably take all day, and hopefully you can do it in just a few moments. Thank you so much for your time.